Hi, welcome back to another video. So we've had 3 races of Formula E so far this season, so I thought it would be a good chance to do kind of a power ranking style video where I see who's done the best so far this year and who I think's really struggled. So I'm going to take the first 3 races into account, but I'm also going to put a little bit more preference, a little bit more bias towards the more recent races, so the 2 races in Diriyah. And I think that's how I'm going to do it this season. And I think I'd like to continue to do this all season this year, just to see how things change throughout the year. So so also as a disclaimer, this video will only include 22 drivers, so it will not include Robin Frijns, who only completed half a lap at Mexico City. So in 22nd, I have Kelvin van der Linde. He's 22nd in the championship with 0 points. I think he's been okay. Obviously, he had no testing time before he jumped in, but so he's been very well off the pace of his teammate, Nico Müller. That being said, he's kept it out of the wall. He hasn't caused any major damage to the car, but for now, I'm still going to have him 22nd. 21st, I'm going to have his teammate, Nico Müller. 20th in the championship, 0 points. So the reason why I have Müller this low is that he hasn't done anything. I think the Mahindra powertrain really is the worst on the grid, so I don't really expect a lot out of him. But that being said, he's had multiple incidents where he's crashed the car. He, of course, missed qualifying for the first Diriyah race where he crashed the car so heavily in FP3 that in the free practice session that he couldn't even do qualifying. 20th, Roland, so 19th in the championship, 0 points. Now with Roland, I think similar to the other 2, all 3 are Mahindra powertrain cars. That being said, Roland's teammate de Grassi is 7th in the championship right now with 18 points. And I think there was such a massive pace disparity at Mexico City and de Grassi was able to capitalize it. Roland hasn't. He also had that one small crash in free practice, but really hasn't been spectacular and has been at the back for all 3 races so far this year. 19th, I have Max Günther for Maserati. 17th in the championship, 0 points. Now with Günther, similar to Müller, he's had a couple really bad crashes already. He had that one crash in qualifying, which knocked him out entirely for the first race in Diriyah. And besides that, it's not been super noticeable. He went backwards quite a bit in the second race in Diriyah from a pretty good grid position. And so the race pace hasn't been there. Qualifying's not been great. I think he's been out-qualified at all 3 races by Mortara as well. 18th in the championship is Norman Nato with Nissan. 18th in the championship, 0 points. Now with Nato, qualifying hasn't been great. He's been out-qualified a couple times by his teammate. He's also been behind quite a bit in the championship compared to his rookie teammate, Fenestras, who's 13th with 4 points. I think that's really the big thing. I expected quite a bit more from Nato coming into this season. He's the lead driver, he's the experienced driver, and he hasn't looked like the better driver, so that's why I have him this low. Number 17, Sergio Sette Câmara, 21st in the championship, 0 points. Now, with Sette Câmara, he's in the Neo, and we know the Neo is not a great car, especially in the races. But that being said, he's been out-qualified by Ticktum all 3 races, and he hasn't really ever sniffed points at all. And he's finished comfortably outside, so in the 13th, 15th, 17th range, all 3 races. So not terrible, but not great either. 16th, I have Antonio Felix da Costa with Porsche. 11th in the championship, 6 points. Now with da Costa, the reason he's this low is pretty obvious. His teammate's first in the championship with 68 points, has 3 podiums, and hasn't finished lower than 2nd. Da Costa has 1 7th place finish, and the other 2 races he finished outside the points. Now the first race in Diriyah, I know he got crashed out at turn 1 on the first lap, so there's not much he can really do about that. But the second race in Diriyah, he looked quite poor in comparison to Wehrlein, as well as the first race in Mexico didn't look great either. So I think really out of the 4 Porsche powered cars, 2 of them have been fantastic this year and 2 of them have been really struggling. And it's really a case of, I think they're kind of still getting used to the new cars, and because they're quite different than from the old Gen 2 cars. Speaking of Porsche powered cars, 15th I have Andre Lauder, 8th in the championship, 14 points. Now Lauder's teammate Jake Stennis, 2nd in the championship, 62 points. So that's a massive gap both in the championship standings and in the points. The reason I have Lauder slightly ahead of DaCosta is he had, I think, 2 slightly okay-ish races. He had quite a good race in Mexico, came 4th, and also one of the good race in Diriyah as well. But that being said, the gap to his team is still massive. I know he's going into a new team, and same with DaCosta, that could be a factor, as well as getting used to the car, but still quite poor. 14th, I have Stoffel Vandoorne, 15th in the championship, 1 point. Now, I think with the DS powertrain, the DS Penske team, they're not great in qualifying, not great in the race. I think they both have 2 extremely good drivers, so I don't really think it's a fault of the drivers, but that being said, they haven't had a great season. So Vandoorne's had 1 10th place finish, which is in Mexico. The 2 races in Diriyah, the first was quite uneventful, and the second, he was in points paying position, but then failed to arm attack mode and got a massive penalty after the race and finished last. I don't know if that was driver error. I think I read online that he didn't have any communication, so he wasn't even sure if he got attack mode or not, or what was going on. But that being said, still not great overall. 13th, I have Nick Cassidy, 10th in the championship, 10 points. So with Cassidy, similar with Lauder and DaCosta, he's been okay, not great. He's been out-qualified by Buemi all 3 races, and I think he's been beaten in the races, all 3 races as well. Again, this is kind of just a case of there being a massive gap between him and his teammate, which I think he really needs to try to beat Buemi the next couple races if he wants to be higher up. 12th is Jean-Eric Vergne, 12th in the championship, 6 points. So he has 1 7th place finish, which I believe is from Diriyah. He looked quite good in Mexico and then looked like something happened at the end. But again, same with Vandoorne, not a lot to say. The DS powertrain we think doesn't seem to be very good. Probably I would rank it about 3rd or 4th best powertrain so far this year. That's certainly something I can look at. And I think that overall he's been okay, not great, but I think still looking for better in the future. Okay, so 11th I have Mortara, 14th in the championship, 2 points. So in Mortara, he had 1 really terrible race in Mexico, qualified poorly, crashed into the wall. Diriyah was a bit better. He qualified quite highly at one of the Diriyah races and finished 9th. So I think he's been much better. He's been a bit better than Gunther, but still not great, and you want to try to crash a bit less than that if you want to have any chance. I think obviously he had 2 very strong years in Formula E in Season 7 and Season 8. So I think probably another driver who's having a bit of challenges adjusting to the new cars. Number 10, Sasha Fenestraz, 13th in the championship, 4 points. Now, I think Fenestraz has had quite a good rookie season so far. Got 1 point finished. He was in the qualifying duels in Mexico. Obviously, with a rookie, there's the race management and energy management is something that takes quite a bit of time to get used to. So I'm willing to cut him a bit of slack for falling back in the races when he's qualified high. And he's overall looked better than his teammate Nato, which I think as a rookie is really the best you can hope for. So number 9th, I have Mitch Evans. So Evans is 9th in the championship with 11 points. So I think for Evans, he's been kind of up and down. He's had a couple good races. He had a really good qualifying second race in Diriyah and looked like he could maybe get a podium. I think the pace of the cars of the Jaguar is still a bit lacking. The first race in Diriyah was not great. He got that 5-second penalty for a collision with Rast, and then also made quite a significant mistake at the chicane and dropped quite a few places. So he hasn't really had a really solid Evans-esque weekend where he's just simply charging through the field during the race. And he's also behind his teammate by a little bit in the championship. I think his teammates looked a bit better, which is why he's ahead of him. Number 8, I have Lucas di Grassi, 7th in the championship, 18 points. So what's keeping di Grassi this high is that his fantastic performance at Mexico City. Qualified on pole and kept most of the cars behind him in that massive train. I think if that was on any other track, I think if he had qualified that high at Diriyah, I think he maybe would have gone 8th or 9th. I think he was just lucky that overtaking was so difficult at Mexico City. And I think at Diriyah, he's really kind of been stuck with the pace of that car, kind of trundling around at the back. Again, not really his fault, but it hasn't been spectacular either. So that's what's holding him back from being higher on this list. Number 7, Dan Ticktum, 16th in the championship, 1 point. Now, I've been really impressed with Dan Ticktum's qualifying performances this year. He's qualified in the duels 2 of the 3 races. One race he didn't make the duels, but he still qualified, I think, 11th. He's outqualified his teammate all 3 races. And his speed in qualifying just has looked exceptionally good. Now, we know the race pace in that car hasn't been great, so that's why when he drops down the field, I haven't been punishing him as much. That being said, he still managed to get 10th place at the second Diriyah race. So he actually moved up from his qualifying position. So I think that was just fantastic overall. So Dan Ticktum in 7th. 6, I have Jake Hughes, 5th in the championship, 27 points. Now Hughes has been the best rookie so far this year. Of course, there's only him and Fenestraz, but he's qualified exceptionally well. I think the McLaren, the old Mercedes, has quite a good car, and they have a really good car in qualifying. And I honestly think if they had better drivers, if they had Vandoorne and Byrne, for example, I think they would be higher up, and they would be higher up in the championship. That being said, both Hughes and Rast have been good. Hughes, I think, his qualifying has been better than Rast, but his race pace has been a bit weaker. Of course, he's still learning, and he's still a rookie, but that's why I've decided to put him here in 6th. 5th, I have Sam Bird, 4th in the championship, 28 points. Now, for Bird, I think he's had quite a solid race here in Diriyah. Race in Mexico was an absolute disaster. Problem in qualifying, drivetrain broke in the race. Diriyah, he got podium in the first race. In the second race, he finished 4th, I believe. Now, I think he would be higher up on this list if he hadn't made a couple of those mistakes during the second race in Diriyah, where he, I think, kind of threw away a podium. He had tons of extra power, made a mistake at the chicane. I think lost him tons of time and is one good opportunity to get into that podium. 4th, I have Sebastian Buemi, 3rd in the championship, 31 points. Now, for Buemi in the races, he's been very consistent, 6th, 4th, 6th. And he's just been very solid and has been, I think, getting the best out of the car right now. He's well clear of his teammate as well in the championship. His qualifying has actually been more impressive to me. He qualified on pole the first race in Diriyah, and his other 2 qualifying positions were quite high as well. So I think overall he's looked much better, much like the Buemi old from season 2, season 3 in Formula E, and I think it's great to see. 3rd, I have Rene Rast, 6th in the championship, 26 points. Now the first race in Mexico was kind of a throwaway, but the 2 races in Diriyah I was really impressed with Rast. I honestly think he got a podium that the car didn't really deserve the second race in Diriyah. And I think that he really has gotten the most out of it, the 2 races in Diriyah. He's been a very calm, very smart driver, very measured and calculated with his energy use and his driving overall. So that's why I have him third in my power rankings. 2nd, I have, so now of course everyone knows who these 2 drivers are, 1st and 2nd in the championship, but what order? So I've decided to go with Jake Dennis, second in the championship, 62 points. Now Dennis won first race from 2nd in Mexico, finished 2nd the first race in Diriyah from 9th on the grid, and finished 2nd again from 5th on the grid in 2nd race in Diriyah. So both qualifying's been mostly good, race pace has been phenomenal. Just has cut through the field. Every race so far has looked fantastic. Of course, I think number 1, I have Pascal Wehrlein in Porsche, 1st in the championship, 68 points. Now, finished 2nd in Mexico and 1st in Diriyah from 9th on the grid and 6th on the grid. So he hasn't even qualified in the top 5 either of the races he's won. I think his race pace has been phenomenal. His race pace has been great. His use of attack mode has been strategically has been very good as well. He basically hasn't put a foot wrong all year, and I think both him and Dennis have really gotten the most out of the Porsche car so far this year. So that's my power rankings, my first power rankings for Formula E 2023 so far this year. I'd like to do this after every race, and we'll see how things go. So thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'd like to hear your thoughts. What are your rankings so far this year?